Hi everybody, this is Oksana. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make this double-sided pendant. It uses a bead. So this is one side and then the other side is swirly. And I'm using gold fill wire in this video. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about gold fill wire as well. So stay tuned to see how I made this. The wire I'm going to be using is this 22 gauge gold fill wire. It's square wire, 1420 karat gold fill. It's dead soft and it's from riogrande.com. So the gauge is a little thinner than you may be used to seeing 22. I usually go down to 21 in copper. But because this wire is just a smidge more firm than the copper, and depending on the design that you're doing, it's okay to go down to 22, I feel like. And obviously the thinner the wire, the more economical it is when you're working with something like gold fill. So the piece that I cut myself is 8 inches long. And the stone that I'm using is this little heart here. It's a bead. It's a drilled bead and it's Blue Lace Agate, and it measures just a smidge under an inch. Maybe like 23 millimeters or something. And for the thinner wire that I'm going to be using later on in this video, it's 24 gauge half round. And for my tools, I'm going to be using these Swanstrom tools. I got the wire cutters, I got these thin little pliers here, and then the round nose pliers as well for making the swirls. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go down about 2 inches and we're going to put a bend in our wire like this. And another thing that I just want to say real quick about the gold filled wire is that while it is more expensive than copper wire, a piece like this that's just one small piece will be just a couple of dollars. Obviously it fluctuates, and precious metals are always changing in price, so it can be pretty affordable if you are working with small quantities of it. So what I'm doing now is I'm using my round nose pliers because I'm going to make the bail. So I'm bringing the wire around and decide on the size of bail that you prefer to make. You can make it a little smaller or a little bigger. So once you've made that loop of your bail, you just hold the loop with your pliers and you bring the wire completely around. So just like one full circle. Let me zoom in a little bit there for you. All right, and then where you brought it around, we just need to tighten that up because I just did that by hand. So I'm just using my pliers now to kind of press down on that little wrap that I did, just to make sure that it's nice and tight. And so the gold fill wire has a core of brass and an outside layer of real gold. So we're going to take our stone and you want to determine, so this is a double-sided pendant, you want to determine which side you're okay with being a little bit more covered up and which side you want to be more exposed. So if you have a side that has like a prettier pattern on it, put that side in the back. So this is going to be the side with the less pattern, or the side that you don't mind being covered up a little bit. So this wire that is coming out here, we're just going to push it down onto the stone, and what we want to do is we want to make a swirl with that wire, but right now it's pretty long, so if we make a swirl it's going to be like a giant swirl. You just kind of have to gauge by the size of your stone. So if I trim off a little bit, kind of to the point where the stone ends, I think that this is going to be an adequate amount. And because our stone kind of like slips around on here, what you can do is you can kind of bend this wire forward, and now we can't do that. So that way as you're working with this, your stone's not going to slip around and annoy you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my round nose pliers and I'm going to make a swirl. Now, if you have your own preferred method for making swirls, that's great. I like to just kind of squish the tip of the wire. I don't know why, I've just always done it this way. And then I grab it and I go ahead and I start to make my swirl. So the layer of real gold on the gold fill wire is quite thick. It's much, much thicker than something like a plated wire. So you want the swirl to be just a little bit more on the right side there. So I'm just gonna try and adjust it in such a way that it moves a little bit to the right. So just like this, and then we're gonna push this up, and you want it to lay against the swirl, and we're gonna attach them to each other by using the half round wire. So you just need a small piece of the half round wire, just if you're cutting it and you need to measure. I usually just eyeball it, but if you are more of a measurer, about 2 inches should be adequate. So if your swirl needs to be just kind of lifted up a little bit, you can go ahead and do that. So you can get the half round wire underneath both the swirl as well as this wire that's going next to it. So once you've done that, you want to just kind of bring it down to make the attachment, and then you want to wrap it around just the single wire here. So I like using my pliers because it's too hard for me to do this portion with my fingers because it's just like a really tight space. So this wire is really durable because of the coating of gold on here is quite thick. So we're just gonna do the other side now. So just putting it underneath this single wire here and just making a few wraps to attach. And another great thing about the gold fill is that you get this golden look, and there's also really beautiful rose gold. I love using that one. If you like the look of raw copper, but copper oxidizes so quickly, the rose gold looks like that, but it doesn't oxidize. So gold doesn't oxidize, and you get to have this beautiful look, beautiful golden look that does not require any maintenance and upkeep. So I'm just gonna do one more wrap here so it matches the other side. I'm just gonna bring this around one more time. That way there's 3 wraps on each side. You don't have to do exactly 3, whatever works for you and you think looks good. So I'm just gonna trim and leave myself that little wire end so I can tuck that under. And then this one's a little trickier because it's kind of coming up here. So I'm just trying to trim down below where no one's gonna see that little wire end. So now I'm just tucking that little wire end away from the top. And I'm just adjusting my wire because it got a little bit bent when I was working on it. So here's what we have. The little swirl is attached to the wire, and now we're bending the wire forward like this. And here on the front, it's coming down like this. So what we want to do now is we want to form a little loop, and we want it to be kind of centered here. Now before you do too much, if you want to add a little bead, that's totally optional, but just for a little bit of a different look, you would add the bead to it now. And the beads that I'm using are the gold filled beads. Here's the sizing of them. They're the 2.5 millimeters. This is the whole size. This is what they look like. So once you slide that on, you kind of want to try your best to estimate because you want the bead to end up on the bottom of your loop. So see how for me, it's not really perfectly on the bottom. It can be hard to get this part perfect if you're using a bead. So if you're new to this, or if you're having trouble, maybe just skip the bead. All right, so that looks better to me. I'm just gonna come in here with my pliers and try to fix this little bend that got formed. All right, so what we want to do now is we want this wire to go back to the other side. This is a little bit crooked. All right, go back to the other side, but be symmetrical. So just look at your original one, and then as you bring it, ooh, I messed that up there. Let me straighten that out. I kind of pressed on it and bent it. All right. There we go. I think that looks symmetrical. So we're gonna bring it down this way. Here is the other side. So on this side, it'll look like this. So this side's done. This is kind of the finished look of that side. And here, we're gonna make one more swirl. So we're gonna follow this wire down, kind of where it comes back to meet this other wire. And we're gonna start to put a curve in it, like this. And then, I don't know if it's easier for you to make the attachment first or make the swirl first. For me, it's easier to make the swirl first. So I'm gonna do that. So I'm gonna trim off this little bit of wire. So this is how much excess wire we ended up having. I wasn't quite sure the exact amount we would need because everything comes out slightly differently each time. You know, sometimes the swirls are smaller, sometimes they're bigger. So about 2 inches, so you could have made it a little shorter if you wanted to. And unless your bead is a little larger, like your bead doesn't have to be the same size as mine, so if it's a little bit bigger, then maybe you won't have that excess wire. Go ahead and make that swirl now. All right, I think that's good. So we would attach it like this. I'm just gonna make sure that it still looks good from this side. I didn't accidentally move anything out of place. And then here's a little piece of half round wire. I'm gonna slide it under here like this. So first I'm gonna attach this little end. So that's 3 loops there, but I just have this little end. I think I'm just gonna bring it around for a nice 4 loop look. And now this piece, so we wanna kind of pull on this because you want that swirl to go right up against the wire. And then we're gonna feed it underneath the wire and just kind of pull this way to to make that attachment there. So all that's left is to finish this wire. So since I did 4 little wraps on the bottom there, I'm going to do the same thing here. So that's 1. And 2. We can kind of squish that together there. And 3, and this is going to be 4. So since that's our last one, I'm just going to trim the wire. And then we have that little wire end. I'm going to take that little wire end and then just kind of tuck it down and press it down this way. And then I'm going to fix this wire because it got a little bit bent. And if you wanted to use, I know I'm using the 22 gauge here, but you could use 21 as well, especially if you want to use a slightly bigger bead. So here is the finished piece, and this is kind of the swirly side, and then here is the other side as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about gold fill wire. Thank you for watching. Bye.